I coach a lot of people, and sometimes they come to me saying, well, Michelle, a lot of times I have different ideas. I disagree with other people. And when I say that in a direct way, sometimes I offend people or people got offended. One real example is recently I coached someone. The lady is a Chinese, and she expressed this in the meeting. And the other person talked about something, and then she just she's very brave, right? She's very direct. She said, well, I just talk what I in my mind. She said, well, I disagree. This will not work. It does not make sense. Users will never find this feature. You should blah, blah, blah. So this is how she said, right? She came to me, she said, well, Michelle, I think I probably offended the other person. I never meant that. But after this meeting, the other person, the attitude is very different, right? Become distancing to me, and was not as warm as before, was not as responsive as before. I asked her what happened. She told me this is what she said. There can be different way of saying it, and I helped her to think about what can be some different way. And more importantly, I said, well, if you think that's the case because you said something in the meeting that the other person feel uncomfortable, offended, then you can go and have a private conversation with him and explain that you come from a different culture and you are very direct, and your English may not really expressing what you really wanted to say in terms of your emotions. So let him understand that you didn't want to offend anybody. You explain that, then that will get the understanding. All right, so Nicole is an expert and an American, so she can share with us when this kind of things happen, right? When we say so direct, how American feels about it, and what is some different way of saying it. Yeah, go ahead, Nicole.
Okay, so here's what we want to do. We want to start out by showing respect for the other person's work and opinions first. You don't necessarily need to express that, but you want to go in thinking that I know this person did the best they could, and I need to be kind. And you might say that, especially if you're their supervisor. I can tell you've really put a lot of work into this. I mean, really let them know that you recognize that and that they didn't do a bad job, but maybe there are things that could be improved. So first of all, ask permission to give feedback, especially if you're not the supervisor, but maybe the coworker. You could say things like, I have a few ideas about this I'd like to share, if that's okay with you. And they'll say, oh, of course, yeah, let me know. I really like to make this better. Can I offer a few suggestions? And again, they'll be like, oh, yes, of course. Express your feelings, starting with the word I. You want to say, well, this is my opinion here. I think, I feel, I'm not sure. Make it clear that you're giving your opinion and advice, and it is not something the other person must do. So it seemed a bit aggressive, what the original, in Michelle's example, her client, seemed a little bit aggressive and a little bit of an attack with so many negative words. No and never and not. It was, it seems very harsh, and the person, I'm sure, was very defensive and like, hey, I did a good job on this, and you're, making me feel terrible. So here's some better ways that we could express that. When she says, I disagree, we might say something like, may I share my thoughts on this? Like, kind of, asking that permission of, well, instead of I disagree, like, kind of saying it in a nicer way. Are you open to brainstorming some more ideas? I see your perspective. Can I share something from a different angle? So all of these are kind of well thought out, more polite ways of saying, maybe I don't completely agree with you, but I would like to add something to what you've done without hurting the other person's feelings. Instead of this will not work, which is like very abrupt, you might say, add more words to it. I don't think that will work. I'm not sure this is the best solution. I'm not sure is always kind of a much softer way of saying something like no. it does not make sense, we say, I'm not sure that makes sense. Users will never find this feature, but I think users may have a hard time using the word like may or might, and I think really softens that and just makes it much more approachable. Or kind of saying, you know, I'd like to look at this part a little bit more, maybe we can improve here. Instead of you should, thinking, you know, I think you should. So reading between the lines, that is an idiomatic phrase that means that the words don't always say exactly what they say. That you need to kind of analyze the situation more to really understand the meaning, because the words will not give you all the meaning. So here's a quick little graph that a doctor, I'm not sure what if it was linguistics possibly, from UCLA did a study about the elements of communication. And he found that only 7% of communication was based on the words that were spoken. And that's actually quite shocking. But when you think about it, it makes sense that the thing that really spoke the loudest was the person's body language. And with body language, we're also including the facial expression. So you can tell very clearly what, well, at least on an American's face, what they're feeling usually. And in addition, 38% of the communication came from the tone of voice, like the pitch that we're putting on things, the stress that we're putting on things. So those parts of pronunciation and body language and culture really do play a very important part in communication, more so than just the words, right? So body language, facial expression, and tone are far more important than the words said in determining meaning. So you need to pay more attention to the emotion that was behind the words than the words themselves. I'll give you an example. If you're presenting something to your boss, your colleagues, whatever, and they say, oh, great, perfect, nice. That doesn't mean you did a great job. That just means they're saying, okay, it's a very kind of a neutral response. Although, oh, perfect, great. You know, that sounds really positive. It's really quite neutral. It's just kind of, okay. But if they have a lot more words and they're speaking at kind of a higher pitch and you're hearing some emotions, say, that's really cool. I really love how you did that. When they're kind of adding more and going on, they really liked it. So look for that emotion. I mean, listen for that emotion. Are they going up? Wow, that is so cool. That is amazing. That is awesome. They're really stretching the words. The pitch is varying. That's your positive reaction there. Also look at the body language and facial expression. We all smile a lot. It doesn't mean we're happy. We're just trained to smile for the most part. Can you read faces? What I hear a lot of times when I ask my students to tell me about what English sounds like and how it compares to your native language, but also tell me what it looks like. When you look at the face of a native speaker, what does their face do? And is it different from what your face does when you speak your language? And they tell me like, oh, they move their eyebrows a lot, right? There's a lot more movement in the face. So you need to pay attention to that because we are communicating with those facial expressions. And we're communicating more with those expressions than we are with words. So watch the eyebrows. Watch the tension in the face, especially around the mouth. When people are kind of annoyed, you know, you'll see lines around here. You'll see lines in the forehead up here. Look at the eyes. Are the eyes really big, like they're surprised? Are they kind of neutral, or are the eyes kind of like squinting, like they're kind of maybe angry? So pay attention to those things. I'm going to give you an example on the next page. I'm going to give you some pictures and see if you can recognize what is being said. The face on the left that is all by itself is just a neutral face, no emotion there. But the other 6, they're a little bit exaggerated, I think, but I think you get the point. You can really see the emotion in the face. The first one, top left, Happy, just general happy, not ecstatic, but you know, genuinely happy. You'll notice that the smile reaches the eyes. The eyes are also smiling. The next one over in the middle there on the top, he looks like he's really surprised, right? That looks a little bit exaggerated. Also, the one next to him looks kind of exaggerated. He looks like he's horrified or afraid, you know. Oh. Down on the bottom left, he's looking kind of annoyed, mad. Oh, well, no, maybe the one in the middle is mad. Yeah, he's not happy. Well, and obviously the far one on the bottom, he's kind of sad. So there you go. That was fairly easy. Hopefully you can kind of recognize the positive emotions, the negative emotions, and the other ones. So practice really looking at Americans' faces and what they're doing as they're expressing themselves and telling stories. All right. That is the end. And what was your biggest takeaway from this workshop? You know, what did you think was the most interesting thing, the biggest thing you learned, you know, what you're actually going to use? And go ahead and put that in the chat. We're kind of eager to see, you know, what you guys learned and what you thought about our workshop.